Okay, let's see. Oh, this is the random picture one, so we'll take a look at that one. There it is. Well, let's take a look at each one. Okay, so we have a bunch of images here. About 7 of them it looks like. And pick image randomly picks one. And it looks like on load, on the window load, it calls start, which is going to pick image. It's going to call pick image in on click. So what should happen is every time you click on this, it should change the picture randomly. Let's see if that's going to happen. Ah, there we go. And you got the code again. We went through this. It's pretty much, it's got the 7 different images and some descriptions as well. Another array for the descriptions. Pick image, which gets called by the click event, called automatically by the click event, randomly selects an image from 0 to 7 in this case, or 0 to 6 really, and then uses the image icon to just set the different attributes, which is what causes it to change. Okay, I don't know. We probably didn't talk about this yet, but we need to talk about this because it's important. Pass by, there's 2 ways to pass arguments to functions or methods. Pass by value, which basically means you give a copy of the value to the method or the function. Pass by reference, which means you pass the memory address of where the memory can be found. And there's reasons. The main reason why you do it 2 different ways is efficiency. When you're passing an atomic type, which means just one small value, a couple of bytes, handful of bytes, 50 bytes, not much memory, it's generally passed by value because it's easy to make a copy of it. Things are generally passed by reference when they're very large. Like an array can get very large. So an array is automatically passed by reference. So the analogy here is, imagine that you've got War and Peace, book War and Peace. And a friend says, something happened to page 300 in my War and Peace. Can you give me a copy of your page 300? And you're like, okay, so you go and you make a photocopy of page 300 and you give it to your friend. You've got the original book. They can take that one photocopy and mark it up all they want. That doesn't magically mark up your book on that page 300, right? But now let's say they lost the entire book. Well, you're not going to photocopy your entire, how many hundreds of pages War and Peace is, and probably illegal as well, by the way, but it would take forever. So you give them the entire book, the original book, and you ask them to please return it in good shape, not to mark it up or anything like that. Well, if they don't listen to you and they mark it up anyway, highlight it, whatever, when you get it back, you're getting back all that markup. And that's passed by reference. It means giving the original. Passed by value means giving a copy of it. Passed by reference means giving the original. And the main reason is efficiency. Of course, sometimes you actually want the method the function to change the value. So there could be, you may be doing that intentionally because you want that to happen. But those are generally the 2 ways of passing memory. Copy, by value, which is a copy, by reference, which is the original. In JavaScript, simple data types are like numbers, Boolean values, and strings are passed by value, so a copy set. But anything more complicated than that is generally sent by reference, generally because they can potentially get very large and it would be inefficient to make a copy. And arrays are one of those things. Again, this improves performance because it eliminates the overhead of copying large amounts of data. All objects or complex data types are passed to functions by reference, and of course an array is an object or a complex data type. With pass by value, changes to the copy that are received by the function do not affect the original, because you give a photocopy, right? But in pass by reference, it's just the opposite. You're giving the original, so if they make changes, it's effective. And we'll see some examples of how that works in a moment. You pass an array as an argument to a function. You specify just the array's name. And we saw that already in some of the prior examples. So you can pass the entire array as passed by reference. However, if you pass an individual element of the array, because that individual element is relatively small in size, that actually gets passed as a copy. So only the entire array gets passed as a reference, but one element out of the array will be passed as a copy. So that can get a little confusing, but we have an example to see how that works. We'll talk about some other things. Join and split or join method of an array will actually combine all elements of the array into a string, a version of it. It's like almost, so it stringifies it, and usually it's delimited by some character. A comma is a fairly common one, or it could be something else. So this is pass array. Okay, so it shows you a couple of things. The original array, the modified array. Passing just an element, 8, and the value modify element is 16. The value after the modify is 8. So let's take a look at a couple of those. Okay, so here we create the array. Then we call output the array with the entire array name. Then we call modify array, which is going to modify it in some way. Then we output the array again so we can see the changes. So let's look at output array just simply. It outputs it using the array.join based on a space as the delimiter. So it just creates a single string with the entire thing spaced out. In modify array, we're essentially receiving the entire array, and we're multiplying each individual element by 2, which is why you can see up here you got it doubled. The values got doubled. The effects of passing the array, and now we'll look at by value. That's all by reference. So in the next case example, we're calling modify element, and this time we're not passing the entire array. You can see because the number 3 is in it, that means we're actually only passing the fourth element, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, the number 4. And when we pass that in to modify element, we multiply it by 2, and actually it'll be 8 that we pass in because it had already been doubled. It will multiply it by 2, and it will display what's in there, the modified element. But then once we're outside of there and we show it again, we see that it's back to 8 because the individual element of the array was not modified. Only the entire array, when it's passed, is passed by reference. But one element out of it, because it's small enough, will be passed by value. A copy will be made. Okay? Questions on that one? I know dealing with arrays can be difficult. Okay. So this is the HTML, and the join method we talked about is the string. Pass an array to a function specifies the array just the name, although the entire arrays are passed by reference, individual elements are not. What's going on here? Okay. No, we looked at that already. Okay, so again, we get the same output on the effect. So the entire array, then it's modified, and we see that the modifications persist because the original was sent. And then with the individual element, just element 3, that wasn't the case. JavaScript does not check the number of arguments or types of arguments passed into a function. It's possible to pass any number of values to a function, yes. So JavaScript is a loosely typed language. Some languages will force you to not only tell it how many items you're going to pass to the array, but also what the data types are. But JavaScript doesn't do that. It's actually an easier language to learn in many ways. So we got our output array that just prints it out as one long array, one long string, joining it on spaces. And with the modify, just simply loops through and multiplies, doubles the value in there. It got the entire array, so it got the original. So this is all your highlight, right, that your friend does. And then when you get it back, you still got that highlight. But the individual element is just a copy. So it doesn't change anything. Okay, ordering arrays. Arrays have a built-in sort capability. There's a number of different ways of sorting arrays, and generally if you have a list, a lot of times you want to sort it some particular way. It has a built-in sort method with no arguments. The method using string comparisons. If you don't give it any arguments, then it will simply do a string alphabetic ABC sort. However, you can give some arguments to specify the name of a function that compares two arguments and returns a negative value if the first argument is less than the second, less than the second, 0 if the arguments are equal, and a positive value if the first argument is greater than the second. So this is passing a function or storing a function in a memory variable, which is just fine. You can do that just fine. Because a function, the name of a function is simply a reference to where in memory that code is to be found to execute it. So a function name is really a variable just like any other one. Okay, so let's look at this code. All right, let's see. So here's the array. Output the array. A.sort compare integers. So we're passing in compare integers. So what this means is that because your array can have any kind of data you can imagine, and an alphabetical sort may not be the correct way to sort it, particularly if it's a number. The number will not sort correctly in every case. So you can tell it to use this function, compare integers, to sort it. So each time, what it does is the sort method will essentially look at two different values at the same time, and it's generally the current value in the array compared to the next one. So value 1 is the current value, and value 2 is the next one, and all you're really doing is you're subtracting one from the other, and in this case saying that, well, if value 1 is numerically greater than value 2, it's greater than, and the array will automatically switch them. And then it goes and it does that with every pair until it reaches the end. And that's how it does the sort. So that's basically how it works. You just pass in the function name without parentheses, and you can call it. It will be called automatically by the sort method of the array. So it gets sorted. So you can determine how something is sorted. And again, you see the output. Questions? Covering a lot of material. No one has any questions? Functions in JavaScript are considered to be data. Therefore, functions can be assigned to variables stored in arrays and passed to functions just like any other data type. And that's true. The function, the name of the function, is a variable that points to an area in memory where all that program code is stored. That's all it is. So you can really treat it just like any other variable if you want. Searching arrays with array method index of is also necessary to determine whether an array contains a value that matches a certain key value. So you can do a search to find out if something is in there. The index of, and there's also the last index of. I don't know if we covered these two when we talked about strings or not. I don't remember. But it basically, in the case of the array, will find the index of where a value is. It will return something from 0 positive if it finds a match, or -1 if it doesn't. Right? So because the match can be on the very first character, which in an array is 0, or the very first row, which in an array is 0, 0 doesn't mean it didn't find anything. 0 means that that it found it in the first row. So -1 is returned if nothing is actually found. You can give some other arguments too, which it kind of tells it where to start the search from. So that's an optional second argument if you want to give it. Okay, so the next example, let's take a look at that one. Okay, so it's going to look for an array. I don't even know what's in there, but let's look at the code and then we'll know what's going on here. Okay, so the array has 100 rows, and it looks like it's going to use a loop that's going to go through it, and it's just going to put 2 times the index, which will give us even numbers, I guess, all even numbers. When we press the button, it's probably going to do a search using the index of. So var element equals a, which is the array, that index of the search key. If it returns -1, it's going to say not found. Otherwise, it's going to say value found. So that's all it's going to say. It doesn't tell us where it's found, just that it's found. We could probably change this a little to make this a little more interesting so that we can see that it's found at... Okay, so let's take a look at that one. Okay, so if I know that if I give an odd number, it's not going to find it. So let's start with 9. And not found. So let's put something in there where it will find it. Element found at 3. Right, row 3. That was, oh, if it's not... Oh, you know what? Sorry about that. It was doing that already. I had my logic backwards. Okay, so we can see that it says either it's found or it's not found. And it tells you where it's found at. And it would be, so 6 would be, because this would start with 100, and so it would be 0, 2, 4, 6. That's correct. So 3 would be the correct location. So again, it'll tell you that it's found or it's not found. Ooh, what happened? And just again go through the code again. We create the array of 100 elements. We put positive numbers starting at 0, 0, 2, 4, so forth. When they click the search button, it just uses the index of over here to find it. So in the past, they didn't always have this index of, and yet we had to write our own search routines. Well, guess you don't have to do that now. Okay,